me, I'll shoot you.
Oh, what if I touch you with a bullet first?
Oh, well, then it's murder because.
It's also
All right, you get started yet?
Yep, we're on right now.
Oh, that all went on.
Todd,
Right.
let's start again.
Where'd you take my paper?
Well, I had a Social Security blanket. No, that's all right. It's fine. Just joking. All right, let's start this. Welcome to segment 6. And our guest tonight is Frank Sharp, and we're going to be talking about women's issues for training.
And probably the best way to start is to ask Gretchen here
What are your issues?
what she's been running into in all of this.
See, I told you, you can't put the word women's and issues together. You have to put something in the middle.
That's because you're not a man. Men can do that.
Well, I'm
regularly.
saying if you don't want to be ostracized by all women everywhere, you have to put something in the middle.
See, that's one of the things as male instructors we need to learn.
I have been ostracized, so I've got nothing to lose at this point.
Well, I think that one of the things that men frequently don't think about is simply the fact that women have hips.
Mhm.
You know, men
Amongst other curves.
are basically shaped like this, and women, have curves. And you
And
try
your
to
waists
put
are 2 to 4 inches higher than men's. Yeah.
right, and you try to put a flat gun, piece of metal, on women's hips, and then they
Curves
stick
in.
out.
Generally, you get that happening, which pokes you in the
Exactly.
ribs, and then
Right.
you put that stupid FBI cant on it. So as soon as you go to grab it, now you're rolling your shoulder up and drawing into your armpit. Yeah, the entire industry is based on large to mid-frame males who are right-handed. That's
It's true.
that's
And that
what
is.
everything is
Yeah.
made for.
Sure.
That is true.
And I've been tearing my hair out trying to get holster manufacturers to listen to this about the women's issues. But what I hear from holster manufacturers is this: we could make a woman's holster, but every woman's body is different, and we're going to end up taking all these things back and having to exchange 15 holsters till we get one that finally works. And I said, so?
Yeah. Do you want to sell to the women's market, or don't you?
And
that's the population.
that's the whole issue, is half the voting block is women,
Right.
and who needs to carry guns more than women?
No.
That's actually who we should be training the most of at this point and getting armed. And the industry needs to address that. And they've slowly been, being dragged by a ring through their nose to do this, but it's not good. You're going to go, I'm sure you have a box full of holsters at home that you've
I do.
gone through.
We bought a whole bunch for a class that I do for that purpose. We can't take time out of our normal concealed carry class to talk about women's holsters.
Right.
Men make up 70 to 100% of our regular concealed carry classes, our Illinois concealed carry class. So it doesn't make sense to take the time out of class to talk about that. And so I created a separate class, about 3 or 4 hours for women I demonstrate the holsters, I talk about my experience with them, and then I give them time and opportunity to try them on themselves. Because as you say, every woman's different. Some women are shaped like this, some
Right.
women are shaped like this.
Very few women can carry in kidney carry. I've met maybe 10% of women can do that. Most women end up carrying appendix because that inguinal channel is the only flat spot on their waist.
Sure.
But we also have the canting issues. So you almost have to have a reverse cant. And these are a neutral or a reverse. And
Again, it
again,
depends
who's
on the
making
body
that
type.
and who's, And even then it's uncomfortable. And now we have to wear something really bulky like a sweater or something in front to cover it. And women's clothing is all made to show curves. It's all made to fit tightly and accentuate the form. Whereas Dave and I walk around with these tents on, nobody cares.
Right.
Nobody cares how we dress. Men have it very easy in this business when it comes to concealing guns.
Well, and I've said that before, that if I suddenly change the way I dress, that would probably send up more alarm signals.
Well, not to the
than
criminal
even
element.
printing.
They don't know. How to
No,
dress.
but I'm saying to the population in general, that would send up more signals than going around printing all the time.
I don't think people notice stuff as much as we think they do. I don't even think they notice printing as much
Some
as we
people
think they
do,
do.
some people don't.
I've been
Yeah.
made one time, that's it. I've been carrying since the first day. And it was a retired chief of police. And I was in a barber shop. I stepped out of the chair and he looked right at it. And he looked up at me, I knew him. And I just smiled and he smiled and that was it.
Yeah, I've been made one time too, and it was by Nick Figueroa.
Was it Nick? Yeah.
Well, and with this though, carrying, how about when I as an instructor are going to stand there in front of you and go, okay, you need to carry a gun. And if you're going to carry one, you need to carry two. Right? It's not going to happen in most people's lives. And, you know, we have some other options. My instructor, I have 3 female instructors on staff, and all 3 of them are actually big fans of the Flashbang. They actually find that useful in certain, in some way. Again, every holster is not going to suit everyone, but they find it very useful when they have to wear dress clothing, you know, where they're wearing skirts and that sort of thing, and they can't wear belts.
You have a problem with the Flashbang.
Well, yeah, I actually have 2 bra holsters. One is the traditional Flashbang that's in the front, and then I have one that rides like more like a shoulder.
And that's a different company?
The armpit. No, actually, it's Flashbang brand also. That one's called Maryland. And and when I wear a dress, if I can't wear a thigh holster, then sometimes I'll wear the Maryland. It's not comfortable. I'm not gonna say that it's comfortable.
You know, it's not comfortable for me either.
But it's,
you know, you get used to it.
Extra uncomfortable. The other thing with the Flashbang itself, like the regular Flashbang, is I found it just, I'm very short-waisted. So for me, there wasn't enough, like I would have to sit like a statue all the time. Like it felt like I was wearing a breastplate or something like that. It was just more uncomfortable than body armor even. Yeah, so to me, it wasn't going to be like a day-to-day solution. But I know a very short woman who loves it. She wears a Flashbang all the time.
It's really hard to predict how that's going to go.
You know, with guys, it's hard. I'm going to get a reaction when I say this, but hopefully the viewers will understand. It seems that the more stacked the woman is, the more she's likely to like the Flashbang.
Okay.
It hides better.
Well, it's easy to hide it. They're used to being uncomfortable all the time because they're dealing with this. So, so that's been my experience. You know, but again, it doesn't work for everyone. Just because you're stacked doesn't mean that's going to be the holster for you.
My number one issue with the female gun, bringing them into the fold, is what I refer to as the little lady syndrome, where the woman walks into the gun shop and the guy behind the counter attempts to sell them a 5-shot J-frame revolver. Right. And
or
usually,
PPK.
But usually the explanation is it's simple, is what they'll say to them.
Yeah.
Well,
she just pulled up in a car. She obviously can operate that. And what he's saying is he's patting her on the head and saying, you leave these, you know, complicated guns back here to us men. We're just going to give you this simple revolver. And it's so demeaning.
It really is. And I would say the whole gun store experience and especially the indoor range experience is very condescending. I've heard stories from other people. I personally have had so many bad experiences at gun stores.
I've had 2 elderly women, totally unrelated. 2 of them, and they went to the same gun store, which we won't talk about. Show up in class. I always tell people, don't buy a gun until you take the class. And 2 of them, one was in her 70s and one was in her early 80s. They both are somewhat arthritic. And they showed up with Walther PPKs.
So the thought process of the gun shop was, you're not going to be able to lock the slide of the rear, so we'll sell you a gun without a slide lock. That's what he was thinking. That's exactly what he was thinking.
But what I said to both of them is, you've never shot that gun, have you? They both said, no. How did you know? And I said, because if you had, you wouldn't be in this class right now. You just sold the gun. They couldn't pull the slide back.
And what more difficult gun could we give a beginner? Let's give them a decocker, 2 different trigger positions, a slide you can't lock to the rear.
Exactly. It's perfect.
Right.
Well, and the other kind of like you're saying with the pat on the head type of thing is, I find there's a lot of small person, so you should have a small gun. And you know, I'll never stop loving the thing I saw on Facebook that it had a picture of a woman and she said, I carry a 45 because they don't make a 46. You know, some women love big guns.
Sure.
You know, I love big guns. My mom loves big guns.
It's all about hand size, and it's all about being able to reach the trigger. If you can't reach the trigger, the gun's going to
It's also about recoil management.
Sure.
You know, recoil management is better with a bigger gun. My mom had never shot a full-size 45. She started shooting like revolver, but the revolver, one of the revolvers that she shot when she was a young woman was a Colt Python. So she's always shot big guns.
Go big or go home.
Well,
Yeah, exactly.
right. She's always shot big guns. And so I took her to the Ruger table at the ISRA open house. And I said, I think that she would like to shoot a full-size 45. She's never shot a full-size 45. I think she'd really enjoy it. And she was on board. She wanted to do it. And the guy at the Ruger table was like, I don't know, trying to get her to go with the compact. And I said, listen, she owns a Ruger GP 100 with a 6-inch barrel. He goes, here you go. Here's a full-size 1911. Have fun. Men just sometimes need some convincing that, we can shoot something outside of what their box is.
Well, the converse of that is all these YouTube videos we see of the men who put the biggest gun possible in a woman's hand when they've never shot before.
You're going to love
And
this. Try
There's
this.
montages of women, guns blown out of their hands, hit themselves in the
I'm
head.
not saying a 12-gauge shotgun is a good idea,
Of
because it's
course.
not.
No, but we should start, if you've got anyone who hasn't shot a gun before, we shouldn't start with something they can't control.
Exactly.
We can build into it. If you do that, great. I've got a whole
And
bag
not
of
only
guns.
that,
We'll work up to
but
it.
let's start with how do you do this? Not just do it, but how do you do it?
And we've got to size it to the hand.
If someone gives me a 12-gauge shotgun and they tell me the proper way to hold it and the proper stance,
But it's most likely still too long for you.
yeah.
The length of pull is probably too much.
But
One of the things, something you just said, is really a big deal. I'm an expert on a case where the guy had small hands, and he has a Springfield Army XD40 caliber, and he's been charged with first-degree murder of his wife, shot her in the head. But what happened is he went to take the magazine out of his gun. He'd never used the gun, and because his hand didn't fit the gun, he couldn't release it with his thumb, the mag. So he rotated the gun in his hand so it would fit.
And the Springfield has a grip safety on it.
It does, which was being held down by that.
Right.
His index finger went on, unbeknown to him, on the other side because the mag release goes through. He was pushing against his finger, and he couldn't get the magazine to come out. So I watched him do this. So then he grabs it with two hands, pushing out with two thumbs, and that finger right there pushed against the trigger. So the gun has, from an operational perspective, it has to fit your hand.
Mhm.
And that's a big deal.
And you have to be able to manipulate it.
Right.
And as much as I carry semi-automatic, or probably auto-loading pistols is a better way to say this, on a regular basis. Revolvers, I own some, and I train with them, and they're part of my life just like anything else. But I think as instructors, we can't be closed-minded that any particular gun is going to be right or wrong for a student. We have to, if they like it, I love it. If they're having success with it and they're able to manipulate it and run it, good for them. But on the other hand, we also as instructors have to make suggestions when we see things not working.
If it doesn't work.
Yeah.
But I always tell students, we never tell our students what to buy. We tell them the pros and the cons of what their options are, and then they figure out what works in their life.
In all of our level 1 handgun classes, we have a section of it called battlefield pickup, where everybody takes their gun out of the holster, sets it on a table, puts a magazine behind it, and then the instructors get out bags of guns and we lay all kinds of stuff out. You go down the line, you shoot everything. Let's see what you like. Let's see what fits. Let's see what doesn't. Let's get our hands on these things, because how many gun shops can you go to and do that?
Yeah.
You can hold it in the gun shop. You can't shoot it in the gun shop, usually, unless there's an indoor range. But even
And then you're going to pay $20.
they're rental
Very
guns. It's a very small collection of guns. And most of the time, the comments I get from our classes, that was one of the most helpful things people were able to do, because they made decisions there that they couldn't make anywhere else. And I think that's imperative, that as instructors, we have to provide those opportunities for
You got to
students
shoot
to
the
do
gun
that.
before you buy it.
Absolutely.
You have to shoot the gun before
Yeah.
you buy it.
And the first one you buy is probably not going to be your last gun either. I think we
No,
all know
because it's
that.
addictive.
And not only that, I've never met the perfect gun. I haven't found the one that does everything. However, I did talk to the Smith & Wesson rep at length at SHOT Show, and they fixed all the things on the M&P that I had a problem with. So it may soon be becoming.
Is this going to be the new Sharp?
No. I had complaints about the finish and the ramper sights and the trigger reset and a bunch of things like that. And they've apparently fixed it all for 2016. So I can't wait to get my hands on one. So we'll see. Maybe getting the locker room for their money now. But
I hold my breath. Glock's got a big foot in the door.
they do. With their law enforcement sales, it's going to take a long time to get that pushed aside. But anything could happen with that company. Gaston's getting older, so
He is, and that's a big family fight in there.
there it is.
Yeah.
Back to women though.
Sure.
Off-body carry. Is that something you ever do?
That's got interesting insight to that.
Occasionally I do it if I don't have any other options. I don't recommend it and I don't prefer it.
Same here.
I think it's a really bad idea unless you really don't have any options.
Problem is speed. We can't get to it. And the other is losing our gun.
Exactly.
Actually, most women have what I would term a personal relationship with their purse.
Mhm.
Okay, they're very, most like men with
But
wallets.
we also have
But
bad
there's-
habits.
And there's a small amount of women who complain all the time if they leave their purse behind in the bathroom.
Yeah.
Right,
You know.
exactly. Women have, and when I talk to women about this, they all nod. You know, I say, if we're honest with ourselves, we admit we have bad habits with our purses, and they all nod. You know, I don't. One reason why I would never do it is because, by way of example, I don't take my purse with me when I pump gas. That would be a very good time for someone
Absolutely.
to try to accost me.
Which we see on security cameras all the time.
Sure.
You can get on,
And-
there's robberies at gas pumps all the time.
So, and I don't want to develop a new habit of taking my purse with me. I just don't want to mess with it when I'm trying to pump gas. I need my hands free. So that's one reason why I generally don't do purse carry. But yeah, I mean, we set our purses down, we become separated from our purses. If a woman is going to do purse carry, the only kind of purse carry that I'm okay with is a crossbody bag. You put it on and you never take it off. It's part of your outfit. You wear it all
And
the
it's
time.
also a purse specifically made for gun carry.
Right.
Which
It
is a
has to be.
separate
It
pocket.
has to be a concealed
It's
carry
like
purse.
a
Yes.
fanny
It-
pack.
Well, not
We can't
even
throw our
just a
Glock
pocket.
in with lipstick tubes and pens.
Not even
rolling
just a
around.
pocket, but a holster.
Well, you can.
Yeah.
It's just
It
shoots
needs to
back.
have a holster in it so that the trigger is covered, so I'm not torching it off before I need to.
Right.
It has to have
The
a
one that
holster.
the holster that she uses though is really, I've never even heard of them.
Yeah, what I use 95% of the time is called a sticky holster.
Have you heard of them?
And
See, I've never heard
I
of it.
like it because, and I've turned several other women onto it, and a few men. It has no clips of any kind. It has no plastic on it to poke me. And you mentioned that because poking into
For
the
disclosure, the first time I saw one was last week at SHOT Show. So somebody gave Farnham one to try out. He's like, "Have you seen this?" And I went, "Oh, it's interesting."
Yeah, and
Yeah.
unfortunately, I'm not wearing it tonight. I would show it to you, but I'm not wearing it tonight because it doesn't work with stretch pants. I'm wearing stretchy pants. So, but I love it because it has no plastic clip to poke me, which that's a real big issue with women is things poking them. And also because it has no clips, you can do right hand, left hand, 360 degrees around the inside of your waistband. So, so you can try different positions. And I do have sort of a winter carry, summer carry thing. I carry in the back in the summer because it's easier to conceal, and I carry in the front in the winter because when I'm grocery shopping or whatever with a winter coat on, it still covers it, but I'll be able to get to it. With my fur coat or my other winter coats, I would never be able to get to it if it was in the back. So
Fair enough.
that's what I carry 95% of the time.
Okay. And most women, I find, from my instructors to my students, we've got to get a gun on you. We've got to figure out a way to do this, and nothing's going to be perfect.
I have basically 4 holsters that I use for different situations, but yeah, mostly sticking there.
And that's another good point. I've had people say in class, that's kind of uncomfortable. Excuse me, nobody said this was going to be comfortable. They said, you can carry a gun if you want to for personal protection. Sometimes it's not.
Mhm.
But most of the time you work with it and you find the right place, the right combination. and you're
I
okay.
know something that's even more uncomfortable, and that's regret.
That's being that's right. It's being shot.
Being
Yeah.
Regret. No,
You're right.
I made a decision years ago that I'm going to be armed and dangerous until the day they drag my dead carcass off to the morgue. Be that as it may, I got to figure out a way to do this, and it's not easy.
No, it's not.
There's times we've got to put on suits and go to weddings and funerals and do all that sort of stuff, and our dress pants made to hold up the weight of a gun. No, so we have to. I stood up at a friend's wedding last year, and the rental tuxedo was not gun friendly. I'll tell you that. But you got to figure it out.
Yeah.
And I tell my students I don't have the answer, but I have some answers, and I'll try to get you an answer if I don't have one. But nothing's going to be perfect here. And we have to know that going into this, that if we're looking for that perfect holster, that perfect gun,
It's not going to happen.
and it won't be perfect all the time.
Yeah.
You know, at some point you're going to find yourself in swim trunks. What are you going to do?
Exactly.
You know?
That's exactly
You know,
right.
what do you do at the gym? What do you
And-
do? You know,
And that's the thing too, and I point this out, I don't always do the holster section in our class, but when I do, I always say, when it comes to holsters, you have two choices. You can either match your lifestyle to the carry or your carry to your lifestyle. And for most people, matching the carry to your lifestyle is what's gonna keep you carrying. Most people are not gonna wanna change their lifestyle to the point where they can carry the same way every day with every, you know, like my wardrobe is basically a uniform, even though it may not be the same color every day, it's the exact same clothing every day so that I can carry the same way. Most people, if you're not a police officer or even a SWAT cop, most people are not gonna do that.
yeah, I tend to dress the same all the time, and my friends and relatives are used to it. But it's because I've got to carry a bunch of stuff. You know, I like pants with pockets on them. I never go anywhere without a wound treatment kit and all that sort of stuff. And I'm sure I get accused of overdoing it. But my school motto is, if not you, who? And that's what it comes down to. I'm trained. I know how to do all this stuff. I'm telling everybody they need to do this. How hypocritical would it be for me to not?
Yeah.
I have to do it every day. And I owe it to myself, I owe it to my family, I owe it to my significant other to be ready for these problems, because that's what I've devoted my life to. And so be it. And in training, when we get back to the women's subject, there's probably some good points and bad points to have men's classes and women's classes. And I offer both. Women are allowed to come to any class they want, and men are not allowed to come to the women's classes.
Right.
That's usually how we work it out.
That's all.
If it's sexism, it's against the men. That's really what
That's
it
what it
is.
means.
Yeah.
That's my point.
I find that even when we get husbands and wives and significant others who take classes together, I put them on opposite sides of the
Yeah,
range.
that's a bad.
Men tend to want to compete, and they start turning it into a contest, and they want to overhelp. You know, they want to charge magazines for the wife and that sort of stuff.
Yeah.
And it's,
I
you know,
never.
But the other psychological thing is they don't want to look like they don't know what they're doing
right.
in front of their wife. So they have a compulsive need to do that. Whereas women typically are
Or they're
exactly the
gonna learn.
opposite.
They're there to learn.
Yeah.
Women come at it from a more of a humble perspective of, I don't know this, and I know I don't.
Yeah.
But what I do is I make them self-identify. I ask the whole class, before we even go out to the range, who would consider themselves to be an experienced shooter. And a lot of men are willing to self-identify when I word it that way. You know, so it hasn't been too much of an issue. And a lot of those couples that come together, they're both inexperienced. You know,
Right.
they're willing to admit that they're both inexperienced.
When you mentioned Dr. Sachs's book, I think Unbreak or whatever, one of the things that he points out in there is the wiring in men and women's brains, and it's a scientific fact that it's different. You know, the left and right lobes of the women's brain has thousands of connector points between those, and men have 3. You know? I mean, we're very compartmentalized. You know, we've got running gun compartment, we've got pay the mortgage compartment, we've got, you know, and it's all
They don't
different
talk to
stuff.
each other. Yeah.
But he also points out that about 15% of men and women have the opposite wiring. And it has nothing to do with sexual orientation. It's just women are very detail oriented, and we find that in classes, I think one of the most there's 2 things about instructing women that I've found that are imperative, and this all goes to relationships and everything in everyone's lives, so it goes outside of guns. But women don't have it in their DNA for spatial relationships. That's not something that they grew up with, or that throughout, whether you believe we've been on the planet 200,000 years or 6,000, it's not something that they've been doing. Whereas men have been taking this rock or this spear or this arrow, and we've been getting dinner, where women have been back in the cave or the tent or the hut, and they've been multitasking. They've been working on dinner and taking care of the kids and picking roots and doing all these close-up things. So in a men's class, I'm not going to spend an inordinate amount of time working on sight alignment and sight picture. Okay, I can explain that very briefly to men, and they understand. They get what I'm saying. I don't even have to go into detail. Whereas in a women's class, I'm going to draw pictures, and I'm going to draw them in 3 dimensions. I'm not even going to use the standard, here's your front sight, rear sight picture. I'm going to draw it from the side view and show them how sight alignment to the target all matters. And in giving commands, simple things like if I were to say to a men's class, align the sights and press the trigger, you know exactly what I'm telling you to do. Whereas women sometimes will interpret that as two different functions. I've aligned the sights. Okay, now I press the trigger. No.
You keep them alive.
While you align the sights, I mean, you know, and I have to add that extra word. And all of that matters when you're teaching, you're not having success and you can't figure out why. And a lot of male instructors get frustrated by that, but they just don't understand how the processing is going on. The other main thing that I think is, this is actually a very serious subject, but it's something that I found in my 15 years of doing this. I wrote a book years ago called Armed and Female by Paxton Quigley. And she has a good and bad reputation, but the book itself was interesting because the first half of it was all statistics, and I'm not a fan of statistics. I hate them. I think they can be twisted in any way that you want.
Yeah.
And one of the stats that she quoted in this book was that by the age of 30, the average woman in America, 50% of them will have suffered a violent attack by the time they reach the age of 30, is how the stat read. And I just thought that was complete BS. I thought about it. I thought about my mom, my grandma, all the women I knew in my life. You know, 50% of them have not suffered a violent attack. So you got to tear statistics apart and figure out where this stuff comes from. So first of all, we have to define attack.
Right.
What is
What is
that?
it? Yeah.
In class, I always use one of my female staff instructors for this. I have her turn around and face the class, and I take my finger and I touch her on the butt. And then I ask the class, what is that? And in theory, that's a sexual battery. It's a battery. It's an assault would be a threat, but a battery is an actual touch. So that's a sexual battery, and I can go on the sex offenders list. On the other hand, is she going to lose sleep over that tonight? No. Probably not. So that is in the same category as a violent attack. On the other hand, how many violent attacks are actually reported?
Well, I was going to say,
You know?
probably your mom and your grandma and your sister and all those people you named.
A lot of them haven't been, we don't know.
Don't talk about it.
And so that comes into, well, we have to add into that abuse. And when you add abuse into it, that number becomes actually factual. And I have noticed over the years that if I have a class of 10 women, 5 of them get that look on their face. It averages out to that when we start talking about this. So it has progressed into the idea of we are teaching self-defense. Well, the operative word there is self. And what do abusers do to the abusee? What do they always say to them?
Basically, you can't get along without me.
It's your fault.
No,
I wouldn't have to do this if you didn't do this. So it destroys their self-esteem. They have none. It's your fault. I'm only doing this because you're not perfect and you do these things wrong.
And when we arrive, she starts defending him for it.
Right. As an officer, domestic disputes are the worst thing to get into. But as a teacher, when I'm having her poke cute little holes in paper, there's no problem. As soon as I personalize the targets, he's attacking you. You see that freeze up happen. And it's very disturbing because you can ask that same woman, he's attacking your children, what will you do? Oh, I'll shoot him to the ground. Right. Well, we've got a disconnect here because who's going to raise your children if you're not around?
Right.
And getting that, I mentioned earlier that men have that compartmentalization. 15% of rape victims are men, but I never hear them talk about it in class. I'm assuming that 1.5 men who come through my class have had some sort of incident in their life, but I'm never going to hear about it. I'm never going to hear about it. Whereas the women in class, we have those breakdowns quite a bit, and it's another reason that we offer women-only classes because it gives them that environment that, okay, if you've got to have the emotional vomit and do that, and we'll. I'm not a psychiatrist, I'm not a psychologist, but I have phone numbers. I can set you up with somebody. In the meantime, we've got to get you through this class, and we have to give you a reason to fight tonight. So if it's because you need to be home for your children, then that's going to be good enough for tonight. And those are things that I think the more responsible instructor will learn about. And if there's any watching this, that's my recommendation. And you can start with Vicki Farnham's books. That's a great place to start that. And then move on.
Give me your website.
Oh, my website is fortressdefense.com. So
that's how simple that is.
Yeah, there you go. For the 2 people watching. Thank you both for watching.
There's probably more than that. I can show you.
You did pretty well.
Yeah.
And,
I appreciate you coming in.
Yeah.
As always, thank you. Thank you very much. And for segment 6, thank you for watching.
That will not upstage you.
Okay. Well, All
Now
right.
for the long drive home.
Yeah, you do. You're further than I am. We're down by Plainfield, Joliet. You got
I got an hour. I got an